we live in a world where Instagram, social media, TikTok, it all shows that tip of the iceberg, and it's the pretty part, but nobody gets to see what's under the surface.
I don't care if I fail 10 times because all they'll remember is the one time it made it. You know, I was actually sitting and I chatted with a good friend of mine this week. He's kind of going through a different phase of life where he was kind of describing as like a midlife crisis. He recently had changed careers, thought he was going to go into something more like ownership in a company, of a sign company, and, you know, just things didn't play out the way he thought it was. And so he was kind of going through kind of like an identity change of what this looks like in his current life. He was in insurance for a long time and just kind of got really beat up by just doing the same thing, being in the corporate day to day. But so yeah, he was a part of a church and working with their cafe stuff, which is awesome. You know, we love hearing stories of, you know, getting hands-on with just serving people during the Sunday service in the congregation. But he had mentioned to me that he's kind of going through just a pullback period in his life. And that period, sometimes you don't necessarily know what that looks like. And so we kind of got talking about what does it look like in your life when you don't necessarily know what the next day comes. You know, you don't necessarily know what's going to unfold in the future, because he's back in insurance again, and he's kind of wandering in the desert, kind of figuring out what does this life look like for him? What's the next journey? And it's something he's been kind of battling with him and his wife, his family, and his spirituality right now. It's just something he's going through, and he's so I was sitting there and I just felt like there was a word in the wilderness. Something that I've gone through before. I'm not currently in this stage of life, but it's a real period of time where sometimes men and women, they go through a wilderness phase where they don't necessarily know what's in front of them. They can just see, you know, the one step ahead or even no steps.
Right.
But in that time period, that's where like a lot happens, and God basically brings us close to his whisper. And I was trying to explain to him that, like, you know, don't shy away from the wilderness of this phase, because that's where your ministry begins. This is where the rebirthing of you individually happens, because that's where it happened all throughout the scriptures. Mm-hmm. You know, if you think about Jesus, and before he went and did his ministry here on earth, he was in the wilderness. Yep. John the Baptist, it was the same thing. Moses, it was the same thing. He was found by the burning bush, and that's where God met him. God didn't meet him when he was in the Pharaoh and the Egyptians' temple. He met him when he was in the desert, and he stumbled upon a burning bush. And so I think it was a really unique thing to just pass on to him, because we had gone through phases with even this company of like storms. Like there's been many a pieces in growth and growing pains of that we've had, especially, you know, the machine behind us. You don't necessarily know what you don't know until you get there and you realize you didn't know as much as you thought you needed to know. And
yeah,
that sounds like confusion, but
100%. Well, I like what you were saying though, you know, this image of the wilderness, right? And, you know, it sounds like he's kind of gone full circle because he's just not sure. You know, that next step didn't pan out. So he's kind of like, okay, I'm just going to pull back. You know, this is what I know. This is my safety. Well, you know, every day is an unknown. Yeah, sure, you can write out, hey, these are my critical tasks for the day. This is what I need to get done, you know, long term. This is my 60, 90, 120. This is my year plan, whatever. Every day you're waking up and you got to step out in faith, right? Every day is, I don't know, like, today's not guaranteed. Tomorrow's not guaranteed.
Right.
We could leave this place and go get hit by a bus, like, God forbid. But, you know, every day there's an element of faith to it. I've got a bunch of thoughts on this as you're talking about it. Thoughts of like an identity crisis. Like kind of hero's journey. There's immediate resistance as soon as you start to do anything big, or like purpose driven, because it's not an immediate thing. This roaster behind us was not an immediate thing.
Correct. Yeah.
Just like the fellow that came in here and toured, and he's on a similar journey, and he's like, "Wow, I've been in business as long as you guys have, and I'm nowhere close to this. Like, how'd you guys do it?" And, what he doesn't see, it's kind of like that stereotypical image of like the iceberg, and it's like the tip sticking out of the water, and then the bottom is like all the stuff. And it's like, we live in a world where Instagram, social media, TikTok, it all shows that tip of the iceberg, and it's the pretty part, but nobody gets to see what's under the surface. And like raw, this is really the depth. This is the meat and potatoes of everything that it's taken to get to where you are. So he's probably going through an identity crisis. He's probably dealing with a lot of internal self-doubt, imposter syndrome. Man, this didn't work out for me. Like, I'm a failure. I hope not. I hope he's able to take this and go into that wilderness and realize that when you get to the edge of the wilderness and you get out of it, like, you get out of the wilderness when you have that reimagining yourself, your story, your purpose, like where you're heading, where God's got you, right? Like John the Baptist was in the wilderness making a way. He knew what his purpose was. He was in the wilderness on purpose. The Israelites spent 40 years in the wilderness. Whether or not you think it's on purpose or not, it doesn't really matter. But, sometimes God puts you in the wilderness for a reason. The Bible says that they were wandering the wilderness up until the Canaanites were ready to be destroyed. Like God was like, okay, it's their time to be wiped out. Now you're going to go take this promised land. Sometimes God's got a bigger picture plan that we just don't know, and we never will know. Like, not saying we're just pawns on his chessboard, but, in Proverbs all over it talks about, in a man's heart, he plans his steps, but it's the Lord who establishes the path, right? That's something that any entrepreneur has to lean into. We can have the best plan. We can always put our best foot forward. But at the end of the day, we got to be very open-handed and just trust, hey, this is going to work out exactly how God has ordained it to work out.
What you said reminds me of something I was just thinking about the other day. You had talked about, the Israelites being in the desert for 40 years. There's this concept where it's easy for your mindset to shift to get you out of Egypt, but it took 2 days to get them out of Egypt, but it took 40 years to get Egypt out of their mind.
Yeah, dude, 100%.
And I think a lot of people, it's not that, God wants you to stay in the desert for a prolonged period of time. And there's times where it's like really important because there's a lot of lessons you can learn in the midst of, sparse resources. But in that same time, I think God allows us to be in the desert as long as we want to be in the desert. There's time periods where the journey from Egypt to the promised land was only 2 days.
Yeah.
But yet they wandered 40 years because of disgruntling and all that kind of, wildness.
Yeah.
And, they made idols and they reverted back to their old ways. And I think that's a testament. That really is a great testament to having the right mindset when you go into things and understanding that the faster that you can surrender it, the faster that you can just understand you're not the peak of, that iceberg, that this is God's laying out of things. That's where I think you can enter into different green pastures and different lands, a lot sooner than you thought.
100%. I think it comes down to, like you're saying, your mindset. Like when you change your identity and your belief, that's when you exit the wilderness, right? It's that reinvention of yourself that, my old ways got me to where I am today, but I want to become this type of person. Right. What do I need to change for that? Oftentimes it's the beliefs about yourself, and the mindset, the identity you hold, right? Like believing, hey, I'm a person capable of this, and you back that up every single day by your actions, right? You know, like you said, it could have been a 2-day journey. It was a 2-day journey if they would have just gone the right direction, but they didn't know, obviously God allowed things to happen because they needed to learn. They needed to be reminded. When they were in those days of sparse resource, they were complaining, let's just go back to Egypt. We had it better in Egypt. Oh, it was better to be under slavery in Egypt than be out here and be free. Like, well, no, you're just so stuck in your old ways. You haven't thought beyond the 4 walls you've put your mind in. It's a beautiful image, and I think when you allow yourself to think a little bit outside the box, to challenge, to ask yourself, why am I thinking this way? Like, what is it about my life? Who taught me whatever? Like, why foundationally do I believe what I believe? And I think as a person digs into that in their life, that's when they really start to, when they question the right things, that's when they really start to get to a point where they're pliable enough to change. If that makes sense. There's also, as the Israelites kind of showed, there's a plasticity, there's this, they have to stay the same because it's what they know. It's the comfort zone, right? The comfort, the convenience, the complacency aspect. We live in a world that truthfully, I think promotes that a lot. Our needs are met, at least here in America. Like overall, I'd say our needs are met. And obviously, like I get it, there's people that are still hurting, still in need, still have scarce resources. But overall, compared to other countries, we've got it really, really good here in the United States. And that's allowed us to be a little bit idle and to just sit still and to just consume and overconsume. And, to continue down this kind of faith conversation we're in, like God shows us exactly who he is in Genesis 1. He's a creator. He's a designer. He's a manufacturer. He created his creation in his image, it says. So if that's true, we are designed to be creative. We are designed to have imagination and to be, fruitful with our brains and our minds and our hands. And what you see behind us is a testament to that creativity. It's the belief in ourselves that, hey, we can do this. We're 2 young guys that we don't have the answers to all the questions, but we're willing to go find out what that is, and we do it creatively. So if this conversation can be an influence or an inspiration to anybody, like that's really what it comes down to, is just a belief in yourself and knowing, hey, I don't have the answers, but I'm willing to do what it takes to go seek out those answers. There's somebody listening to this right now that's in that boat, and that is like questioning, man, should I take this risk? Should I do this? And I'd say go for it. So
it's a good word, man. It's a good word. He's riffing over here. I'm just listening, man. I'm learning myself, and a lot of people do see, a lot of people like to rejoice certain phases of people's lives. Like they rejoice, they rejoice the ministry aspect when Jesus was, performing miracles. But I think it's just almost, if not more important, the 30 years prior to Jesus's ministry, before he actually was doing all the miracles and the sermons and everything. And a lot of people like that. They just like, God, please hurry up. Let's get through this process. It's like, no, man, it's 10 times the process to become the man you need to become. And then, you might have 30 years of growth and 3 years of just, doing what God had you to do.
Yeah, bro.
So that develops in many things. And Bailey and I's life, a lot of people see the last 3 years and they're like, holy cow, we've grown immensely in this company a lot, but they don't see all the back end before that.
Yeah, dude.
We've been in business, and I've been building businesses, and we talked about this before, since I was 18. And so when people look at where we're at today, I'm 28. I've got 10 years before we even, got to the big roaster and we got to, an industrial facility where we can manufacture, 100,000 pounds of coffee in 30 days. And so, like, all of that is not instant. It's a culmination of testament of time and time and time and growth under stress and growth. And he was actually talking about this concept that he was learning in his life, and it's the farmer that prunes the vineyard. And there's two aspects to that. A lot of people don't realize. The first aspect of pruning the vineyard is you're cutting off what's dead, so what's not bearing fruit currently. How we can relate that in our lives is if it's, a bad habit, or if it's something that you're involved in that's not, helping the world, helping people, seek the best version of themselves or seek Christ, then, that's the pruning that we cut off. But the second aspect to it too, that we were talking about, was you also need to prune the most bearing branch. And this is one that people forget about, because so let's say you have a vineyard and most of your grapes come from this mighty branch that you have. Eventually, in season, if there's a little bit of even like bad growth or any type of what's that called, where there's just like brown spots on it, or if it's anything, just not perfect, that little piece of dead on that main branch can actually affect the entire vineyard and kill that entire vineyard. And the same thing in a plant. And so it starts small, and so you need to not only prune what's dead and not bearing fruit, you need to prune what is bearing fruit. And you're not cutting that whole branch back. You're cutting, one notch back, so that you can bear 6-7 times more fruit on the branch that bears the most.
So, I love the metaphor for the audience's sake. What does this look like in life? Like, whether it's a relationship, whether it's business, whether it's working for a company, being an entrepreneur, like how does this apply to somebody that's listening?
I think what's big in some people's life, and I know this for me, so I'm gonna just talk about me because I don't necessarily know everybody else, but I sometimes, if I'm going down a road and this is how I do it and I'm not getting where I want to go, this is not the results I was hoping to get, I used to have like a reset button, in my life. I'd be like, okay, this is not working, we're going to push the reset button, and it's a 180. Right. So that's like cutting big dead branches off.
So what are some of those things that like is your reset button?
Well, for me, like for a long time, like I had a hard time with commitment in almost anything. Like I would commit into something, but I wouldn't put in enough time to see it through because I was looking for the instant results. I was looking for something that was, a 90-day fix, or something that was like a quick and fast fix for what I wanted to go after. And whether that's career or before I was married, that when, I dated a lot of women just to try to find, who would be a better spouse for me. And I pushed that reset button a lot. And sometimes, that aspect of things is not always great. Because God's trying to build something longer term, and sometimes something doesn't always look to be like it's going to be what you thought it was. And dude, you'd come to find out later that little thing that you despised, or that thing that you just didn't really believe in, became the source. It became the branch that bore most of its fruit. So I think that's, I don't really know if that really makes sense for a lot of people, but
no, dude, that's good. I think in my mind, like I'm picturing, this big branch, super green, really luscious, bearing a lot of fruit. And, you go out there to garden and you cut it back to allow for more nodes to come from it. Like you're saying, that kind of compounding growth. Sometimes this can be like in in the best areas of your life, it could be relinquishing things that work really well and passing those off to somebody else. You know, I think we're going through this right now with Pure Earth. We're at this stage where we identified, hey, this is like a really high leverage activity. And this old activity that we did is still really, really good. It's a very good part of our business and what we do, but we can hand this off to somebody else.
Correct.
In our team, and we can train them and raise them. And it's slow at the beginning, but eventually it takes off and it grows and it bears a lot of fruit. And then that allows our main branch to continue flourishing even more, because then we're freed up to actually take action on the things that are the high leverage activities.
That's a good note, because a lot of people don't. The prolonged patience, the aggressive patience in something, like a lot of people see where we're at right here, right now, this month. You know, we've got this roaster right now.
Right.
We've got this facility. We've got these contracts with big accounts. But they don't see, you know, we started our company just like everybody else did. You know, we had actually probably less resources. We had no money. we had a lot of time.
Yeah.
And we had a decent amount of experience, but we also had a lot of inexperience in the same time.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of people, they think you got to start your company with, you know, $500,000 in contracts before you can jump in.
Right.
And that was not.
You got to go find a VC to fund it, and I need $1 million right out of the gate. Like, no.
You know, and people see the culmination of where we are now, but that was like our company started just like everybody else's. We went the first 3 years in our company, and in the last 6 months, we've done probably more than the last 3 years. Yeah. That's just, you know, people don't attest for what that looks like.
Yeah.
But that's the patience and the growth. And tying back to my reset button, that was something I needed to learn, because sometimes you're doing the right activities. Yep. You're doing everything right. It's just not in your time. For me, I'm like tempted to sit there and be like, all right, well, do we push the reset button?
I did this for a month. Why isn't it working yet?
It's like, no, like sometimes you might have literally 24 months of doing an activity and you don't see any growth from it.
Yeah.
And then the 25th month, it 10X's everything that you've done prior. Mm-hmm. And you just don't know. That's why you have to be patient. That's why you have to work every day towards it.
Dude.
Invest in it.
This ties right back into the 40 years of the Israelites going through the wilderness, right? You could be on month 24 of 40 years. You don't know when you're going to find the promised land. You don't know when God is going to allow you into the promised land. There could be a partner that's out there right now that is building his thing, and we're building our thing, and in 20 years we're going to come together and be like, holy smokes, let's partner. And it's going to blow up even more than we ever thought is like imaginable. You just don't know. You don't know somewhere in the world what somebody else is doing and how it could just coincide with what you're building and just really move mountains. And it all takes that faith, man. That faith in it's not what I believe it can be today, but it will be one day.
Yeah.
And believing that, you know, when it's 2 a.m. and you're grinding away on the computer and you're trying to figure out, man, how do I make ends meet? How do I pay the bills? How do I feed the family? You know, hey, how do I make sure my team is getting fed? How do I make sure they're getting paid? How do I make sure that they have the projects that they need to actually grow skills and develop professionally? You know, all the things that we're thinking of day in and day out. Those are the questions you ask late at night. And those are not glamorous. Those are not fun questions to ask.
No, not at all. Sometimes you have to take those resources that you have, and whether it's like, you know, mud and sand, whatever you can get together. The hardest thing I think about running a company is you have to lead for your team, knowing that this is the resources you have and they're not good enough.
Yeah, dude.
You know, and it's not what you thought you wanted. But these people that you have on your staff are sitting here and they're like,
they're counting
looking
on
up
you,
to
man.
you, dude.
They're
counting on you to make something happen. And you have to cast vision, even if you have absolutely nothing.
Well, even when you're doubting what you're saying, you still got to like, yeah, I believe in it. They just don't see what's actually going on. Like, man, what if this doesn't work out? But like, you need that. You need that pressure on yourself to perform.
Yeah.
It forces you to take that next step. I love what you're saying about the scarcity of resources. Like when you said the sand and the mud, like you could have that, or you could have the most beautiful bricks in the world. Regardless what you have, build the best, highest level of craftsmanship, most beautiful thing you can. And whether it looks like the Taj Mahal or the Basilica or some beautiful building somewhere in the world, or it looks like a hut in a third world country, dude, if that's the best you can do with what you have, man, just do it to the best of your abilities and watch how God uses it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all we've done.
I think that's a testament to where we are today. We're just two dudes that started in a garage,
literally,
with no money. We didn't know how to roast. We knew how to taste coffee, didn't know how to produce it. And we've grown very, very quickly to be one of the fastest growing coffee companies in the state of Indiana. And it's not something I look at and be like, oh, look at me, man, because I knew what I was doing. Dude. No, we didn't have a clue. But what we did know is not having a clue is not a reason for us not to build something.
Bingo.
We had to continue to build something with the resources we had. And we can go out and we can pull together a better network of people to have better resources. Yep. And we did everything we could. And we didn't take no for an answer. If we got down a road and we understood that, this is the path we want to go, right? But there's multiple ways to get to that path. We'd take a detour if we had to, and we'd still get in the same area. Yeah. Because we knew, okay, this lesson we learned, I still needed to know that this was the solve. I just need to find a better way to it. Yeah. And you make shifts in your company, and you have to constantly adapt to the new terrain, the weather that changes constantly. And that's everything in life. Whether you're in a job, or you're an entrepreneur, or you're, blue collar man, like everything changes all the time. Oh yeah. And you have to be on your toes. The thing about being an entrepreneur, it's a love-hate relationship. I love being creative. Mm-hmm. It's the best thing in the world. And having the freedom to create and cast vision is the coolest job, greatest thing ever. It's also probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Yeah. Because you are all the risk. Yeah. Right? When, if you are in a job and you clock in and a machine breaks, you clock out and you go home. Yeah. It's great. It's awesome. But, when we're here in the roastery and machine breaks, costs me money, everybody else gets to go home and I get to carry that all night. I get to beat it up at 2 a.m., man. That's what they don't see. And everybody wants to be in your position. Everybody wants that freedom. Yeah. But there's real cost into that. And that's where, I have that love-hate relationship with it. Because I like my sleep just as much as anybody else. And I don't do very well at 2 a.m. I do great at 5 a.m, 6 a.m, but 2 a.m. is not the time to.
That's panic. That's anxiety mode. That for you.
Well, I don't even have anxiety. That's no, what kills me. Is I just my brain never stops. Yeah. I feel like I've never really struggled with, anxiety. I've struggled with like depression before in the past, but the anxiety I've never really encountered. I think just sometimes as an entrepreneur, your brain never stops because you constantly try to find a way out of an enclosed square that you have built. And this square is awesome. This box is so cool. But at some point in time, you need to break out of that and you need to do something different. Yeah. And that's where we're at. We're trying to break out of, and it's really scary at times, but then when you understand, what? I'm 28. What's the worst that could happen? We've got all this time to just build something and see what happens. Dude, 100%. And I'm okay to fail. I like to fail. For me, it makes success faster. It makes me understand why we did something through and through, and I can learn really quickly from that.
Yeah.
But
Oh, dude, so many different avenues I could go down just as you're talking about all this, from, how to think through failure, how to, there's no playbook on how to do it right when you do fail and you have to restart, or if you're starting from scratch. Like, there's no step one, like how to build a business for dummies. Like, no, there's none of that, dude. Like,
there is no how-to book.
You've got the internet, you've got YouTube, you've got, all the AI resources in the world now. But you've got to understand that, like, that's at your disposal. You still need to be creative and think through what's a problem that I can solve for other people and add value to their lives.
Yeah.
And, that's what we do with coffee. And, we've got a lot of great projects working and just cooking in the background that are really going to help a lot of people make a lot of big shifts in their life and really fuel their growth personally. And I'm extremely excited for that.
There's a lot of value. And when you look at a business through a value proposition and not through numbers, and that's hard because Bailey and I, we started with numbers. Like, we understand numbers very well. Excel sheets, you should see the amount of Excel sheets our company is before you even see anything else.
Almost a detriment.
We have like 100 gigabytes probably of
dude,
just
it's stupid
drive documents.
Data.
But, as cool as that is for us to navigate through the world with ones and zeros and other characters, like, at some point you need to just take action. And you understand that sometimes the best thing that comes from our company doesn't necessarily always make sense in the first second we look at it. And the idea is there, but if we looked at it from a different perspective, and that was value, how can we give the best value to our customers?
Yeah.
Regardless of everything else, how can I make the experience that they have with us so good and so amazing that what they pay to us doesn't mean anything because they're upside of them and what they enjoy. And so that's what I love most about our company, is everything is about how can we help them on their journey. And coffee is a great start to your morning. It's excellent.
Dude, it's the best.
We drink espresso all day long, man. And it's awesome. But at the same time, if we just drink the coffee and we get all cheesed up on, all this like caffeine and stuff, but we have nothing to do with it. Yeah. We just sit and you get the shakes. Yeah. You got to put that
all this
fuel
energy
to something.
Yeah. You got to.
So
dude, it's like a laser beam. Do you want to be a spotlight or a laser beam? Right? You want to be a laser beam. You want to be really focused, but it takes time to figure out what to focus on. What's my purpose? Why am I here? What am I doing? And it goes back to asking those questions about why you believe what you believe. Like, why do I think this way? Why do I, down the rabbit hole. So, real talk, we should do an episode entirely on failures, and Failing Forward is a book I think John Maxwell wrote. Read it years ago, and it's a really, really good concept about when you fail, like, yes, you failed, but it's not the end. And like, when you restart the next thing, whether it's a project at work, a project on your house, a project in your business, or just a business entirely, when you fail, you're further ahead personally, so that when you start the next thing, you're like, oh, I already made these mistakes. I don't have to make them again. Correct. Now, a wise person says that if you're a fool and you like to make the same mistake multiple times before you learn the lesson, hey, so be it. I'm a pretty hard-headed guy myself. I've been down that road. I'm still dealing with failures. So everybody's got their thing that they're trying to work through and improve. So yeah, man, we should definitely do an episode on that.
Going back to an earlier conversation we had, why do you think people focus at the top of the iceberg and not the rest of it? When the top is 10%, maybe 5% of actual reality versus what's underneath the water?
My initial gut response is it's pretty. It looks nice. And then they move on. A lot of people don't like the yucky stuff. They don't like the stuff that makes them, feel bad or feel like gross. Like, we're all about dopamine. We're human beings that are just addicted to dopamine. I'm speaking in terms of like the 21st century human being now in America. We love scrolling. We love instant gratification. And like when we see the tip of the iceberg, that's what that is, right? Like, it's not, when you get deep and you actually get below the surface, there's pressure. As you go deeper and deeper, the pressure builds. You don't get that on the surface, and it's comfortable. And that's why a lot of people stay there. What do you think?
I'm just sitting and thinking, and I don't necessarily know the answer to this, but I'm just sitting and thinking about the picture of an iceberg. Where does it grow?
Where or how?
Like, does it grow on all sides? Does it grow? Because in my perspective, it probably grows from the bottom and then the top raises, right?
It's a really good question. I've never thought about.
I'm sitting
how
here. I'm just trying to think
grows.
about.
Well, you gotta think, like, you've got a little ice cube floating in the ocean, right?
Yeah.
And slowly, because ice and water can coexist at the same time, some of that water will stay water, and some of it will phase change into ice and just get stuck and captured. Probably depends on the wind, probably depends on the currents coming through. There's a lot of external environmental factors that contribute to whether or not an iceberg becomes an iceberg from a little block of ice.
So I've got a thing on that. So if we see growth, right, if most of growth from an iceberg is under the surface,
yeah,
right, because I only assume that the water is then refreezing on the all sides underneath of the surface. You're not actually growing the iceberg that is by the wind, the top side of it. So when people focus on the top side of the iceberg, they're not actually growing. The only way to grow is to go under the surface,
where the pressure is.
Right. So in that same concept, being real with yourself and that deep talk with yourself, I think a lot of people run away from because they're in this mind of distraction. We have cell phones, we have social media, we have just noise everywhere in life. But if you really want to see growth, you really want to see change in your own self, it's not going to come by focusing on the top side of the iceberg. The only way for you to grow immensely is to focus what's underneath the surface. So going back to our company, a lot of people like the cool stuff about our company. They like to see what we're building. They like to see the tip of the iceberg. But the only way the tip of the iceberg happens is because Bailey and I are in here until 8 or 9 p.m. putting in work on the back end underneath the surface. Yeah. Right? Because that's where growth comes from. So if you want to build something in your own life, whatever that is, and let's say you like nice things, the tip of the iceberg is not where you actually get your growth. The tip of the iceberg is just a picture of what's below. And if you really want to see a bigger version of yourself, go deep, go into the pressure, go into under the surface stuff. And you have to be willing to do what no one else is doing. Mm-hmm. I can't come in and just leave the place dirty after a roast production day because I know I need to work in this space and I need to be focused and clear. Yeah. If the place is a wreck, then I can't get what I need to be done, what needs to be happening on the ownership side of things. Right. So that concept of the iceberg, I think it's a really good picture for a lot of things in life. I think a lot of people like to see the tip of the iceberg. They like to see everything that's glamorous, everything that's pretty. Going back to what you were saying, but the only way for you to be, an iceberg that is to that size is you have to go deep and you have to go below the surface and what no one else is doing. It's the time in and time out. Yeah. Right. And it's that concept where we put in 24 months of just incredible amount of effort. Our effort didn't change from month 1 to month 24. was the same. We put in all that work, but we didn't necessarily see the results until month 25.
Right.
So that's where, like, you know, we were knocking on doors, we were calling up people, we were sending out emails, we were building relationships with people in the industry, people in Fort Wayne, people outside of Fort Wayne. That was all, you know, just a culmination of everything under the water, everything under the surface.
Yeah.
And you never know what that is in your life. And whatever that thing you're trying to paint, that picture you're trying to paint of what you want to build one day, just understand, as big as it is above surface, it has to be 10 times bigger under the surface.
Yeah.
So you can look at Amazon, you can look at some of these giant companies, Meta, you can look at, you know, Palantir and NVIDIA, some of these huge companies. But if it's the scale that you see on the front end, which is the tip of the iceberg, think whatever that is and multiply it by 10, that's what actually built the top of the iceberg, or maybe even more than that.
Yeah.
You know, so what people are seeing now in our company, that's just, that's 5% of everything that we do.
Yep.
And that's a testament in your own life. You know, you can build whatever you want to build in life. Just understand, as big as you want it to be, and, you know, on the top of the water, it has to be so much bigger underneath.
You know, most wealthy individuals, I'm a big car guy, so most wealthy individuals with a great car collection, I mean, their percentage net worth in cars is probably only a couple percent, single digit. It's probably not even in double digit territory. No, there's probably some out there that it is, because they got some,
up, man.
Yeah, some wild collections or something. But, you know, it looks really great, and you're like, wow, this cost X $1 million. Maybe you'll be like, whatever. But their net worth personally is that under the surface net worth that actually supports that. So that's how it always is. While you were talking, I was thinking another analogy that's really similar is like a skyscraper. You know, the bigger the skyscraper, the deeper you got to go. You got to build those pylons extremely deep down into the earth and really get that good foundation. I mean, if you want to build something big, you got to have a really, really good foundation. So someone that's starting out, like, let's say someone listening, you know, they're pumped up. They're like, man, I know I can do something big in my life. You know, what do you have to say to them?
Dig deep, get under the surface. Do the stuff that no one wants to do.
Yeah.
You know, there is no secret hack. I know everybody listening here is like, how can I get there in 90 days?
Yeah, right.
No, there is no entirely secret hack. Now, we can set the foundation for what you need to do to replicate over time to be able to get to where you want to go. For sure, we can establish that really quickly. My advice to that is be willing to fail over and over and over. That's always been probably one of my biggest strong suits in my own personal life. Is it's not glamorous. Yeah. But here's the thing, I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care what people think about.
Yeah, dude.
I don't care if I fail 10 times, because all they'll remember is the one time it made it.
Yeah, dude.
You know, I didn't fail every company I was a part of, for sure didn't there, but I learned in every aspect.
Yeah.
You know, every company got better. Yeah. Every next step I learned, I learned in this company, let's say I learned, oh man, like having a good product is like foundation.
Yeah.
Like this is what I learned in this company. And then the next company you realize, oh, how important it is to know all the back end of e-commerce. You know, you can have the coolest website in the world, but if you're in the closet and no one can actually get to you, right, and they can see it, or they can see the platform, you need visitors and you need a good platform.
Yeah.
You know, in the next company, I learned how important it is to have a team and not have people tearing each other down, because a team is what's going to continue to scale and build.
Yeah, dude.
Right? You can have a great product, you can have great e-commerce, but if you don't have a team and everybody's against each other, fulfillment makes it 10 times harder than it needs to be.
Yeah.
And everything needs to be in unison. Everything strides and in a synchronized manner.
Yeah.
And so it's really, really important to have a team. So every step along the way, I learned something more that I needed for the next part of my life. And I'm okay with failing. There's a lot of people out there that are not okay with failing. Man, you got to get past that really fast.
Yeah.
Because everybody who's done something, and has something to show for it has failed 10,000 times more than they've been successful.
Yeah, dude.
And that's very true to my life. I'm not the smartest guy in the room, by not even close. But I go back to the old algebra thing where like a lot of people spend their entire life trying to come up with a formula to get to the answer that they want to get to.
Yeah.
And I've found it faster in my own personal life to just guess and check and go from there. The faster I can plug in the numbers.
Dude, we've been friends for how many decades now? I think he's been saying this for well over a decade. Like the guess and check is his go-to.
Guess and check, man.
A/B test all day long.
Throw something at the wall. If it doesn't work, throw another thing at the wall.
Dude,
if it doesn't
see
work,
what sticks, man. Yeah.
And you never know what's gonna work.
Well, and that's how you develop skills, right? If you want to get good at basketball, you're gonna start at the free throw line or maybe layups. And dude, when you first start shooting that basketball, you're not gonna make a lot.
Yeah.
But when you show up the first day, you miss a bunch. You show up the second day, you miss a bunch. You show up the next day, miss a bunch. By day 53, you may not be missing as much as day one. You'll still miss a lot because you still suck, but you're going to be missing a lot less. And then the skills just compound. That's the whole concept, is the skills compound. They stack. As long as you keep going and don't stop, they're going to compound and they're going to grow.
Well, and you have to also understand, so you not only have to do things over and over and over, but you got to do different things.
Yeah.
There's a concept where like, I don't know who entirely coined it, but doing the same thing, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting different results.
Right.
Okay. When I say throw something at the wall, I'm not picking up the same thing I just threw at the wall.
That's a really good point,
I am
dude.
getting something new.
Yeah, it's a really good
right?
point.
I am taking a different perspective. I am taking a different avenue.
Yeah.
I'm taking a different product and I'm throwing it at the wall. I'm not throwing the same thing at the wall every day.
Yeah.
Because then I would be insane. I'd be sitting here talking on this podcast and you guys would be like, who's this guy in the shorts,
Bro, we'd still be trying to roast
I'd be
on
kicking it in the flops, man. But no, like you have to take it from a different perspective.
Yeah.
And you have to be willing to, try multiple things, but also at the same time, it's, persistence.
Yeah.
Over and over and over with something new, a different way of doing it.
There's a lot of humility in that. The amount of, you have to put yourself aside and your pride aside and say, okay, what I thought would work didn't get me where I thought I was going to go with it. What do I need to try that's new and out of my comfort zone? What's the pressure that I have to get into to actually get to where I'm trying to go? And there's a ton of humility in that. You really have to put yourself aside and say, well, I don't know everything that I thought I did, and go try something new. I think in my life, that's been a huge aspect. Like, oh, I thought this would work out, but hey, it didn't really go how my brain thought it would go. And you just got to be okay with that. You got to be willing to trust, okay, knowing that didn't work. If I pick up this stick and chuck it at the wall, maybe the stick works better than the rock. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, and if let's say the wall is not a wall, let's say it's a window.
Yeah.
Rocks work a whole lot better than sticks do, so unless you
need a really big stick.
yeah, that sucker must be mahogany or something.
A big old tree triangle.
Yeah.
Crush the entire house.
Yeah, I think a big perception that a lot of people think is they think the wall is the problem when they don't assess what's in their hand. And they don't assess that maybe I've been throwing the wrong thing at the wall. Or maybe I've been doing it from a different angle. That's not necessarily right.
Or they're throwing the right tool at the wrong wall. Every wall ends.
Yep.
Like, look at the Great Wall of China. It has a starting point and an ending point too, just like every other wall. There's no wall that goes all the way around the world. you're probably just throwing against the wrong wall or the wrong type of surface, you know. Or you're imagining a surface that doesn't actually exist, and you're just creating a problem in your mind that doesn't need to be solved. In summary, to everything we've talked about, I think there's kind of some glaring concepts. I think the biggest thing is your mindset matters a ton, and you have to have a lot of belief in what you're about to embark on, in the things that you're going to do. And you just gotta trust yourself and be willing to fail. Be willing to make yourself look like a goofball in front of, you know, the internet, which in the beginning nobody's watching. You know, there's people that are gonna clap for you like your grandma, but like besides your grandma, there's really nobody watching.
Right.
And even as you progress several years down the road, when you really zoom out, nobody's watching.
Right.
You're putting a lot of artificial pressure on yourself. So, you know, get out of your own way, get out of your own head, and just do the things you need to do every single day to perform. And, you know, if you don't have what it takes to perform, like, go figure that out. Like, go get the skills and learn what you need to learn to get to where you're trying to go. I'd say that's my summary.
It's a good summary. I don't think I need to add anything to that. I think that's where we're at.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, thank you guys for listening to the Pursuit podcast. I'm Bailey Sheldon.
I'm Quentin Graber.
And we'll see you on the next one. Peace.
See y'all later.